destination. Darkness is quite near your feet and senses through your ears. And tide is rising, drought is non-existent. Sins are washed away, all the faults that you were facing. Sunset chaser, where's your new location? Searching for a purpose, the truth is making you nervous. And sunlight's waiting, there's a happy ending. Picture perfect skies, does your life have any meaning? Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you. Daylight saver till the next adventure. Love is all around, but you're focused on your frowning. Rays are burning, achy luminescence, feeling through the gloom, tense and patient for its blooming. Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you.
Sunny sea, there's no point of being me, as the night took my innocence. I'm starting to see there's no mention of happiness. Life I possess, I offer it to you as you banish regret. In my heart, tape mouth, I can't hardly speak. Tracks of my tears slipped away, I am weak as I sing this last melody. You set your own rest. Sunny song is my final request. Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anderson Lay. I'm the artistic director for the 41st Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Holly Kalani. And this is actually the first of our Hiff Talks series here at the festival. This is one of I believe 16 or 17 free panel discussions we're having here at the festival. And, these are, most of them are live streaming. So, you have it's available worldwide, so people can basically watch us on, obviously you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube right now. But we're very honored to have this kind of panel discussions with, film professionals are here attending the festival. And just the fact that, we are all about educating cineasts and, young emerging filmmakers, but also just people who are just interested in film in general. So this documentary panel is exactly what it is. It's a Hiff Talks, very first Hiff Talks of the year, called Documentary Filmmaking. And how has the documentary form emerged as one of the most vital and exciting branches of filmmaking today? Advances in technologies for acquisition, editing, and innovative distribution have changed the face of documentary filmmaking. This panel will explore the expanding repertoire of production formats available to the filmmaker. With the advent of hybrid narrative / documentary forms to film and television, this panel will consider future trends in documentary topics, production styles, and distribution mechanisms in this fast-changing marketplace of ideas. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists here. Starting with Alexander O'Philippi, is a Swiss film director, best known for documentary films Dock of the Dead, The People vs. George Lucas, and the 2017 postmodern documentary examination of the Psycho shower scene, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, entitled 7852, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2017. His latest film, The Taking, is an official selection of this year's Hiff. Welcome, Alexander.
Thank you.
And next to Alexander is Gemma Cubero del Barrio, Spanish-American documentary director and producer. For the last 22 years, she has gained a breadth of experience producing nonfiction documentary films and original programming around the world. In 2006, she founded Talkwal Films. Her documentaries include Ella S. El Matador, She is the Matador, Automatic Cake, which is a personal favorite of mine, Our Atoll Speaks, and The Island and Me, which is also an official selection at Hiff this year. Welcome, Gemma.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Lisa Diapolito, is an Emmy-nominated producer, director, and archivist. Lisa's film documentary Love Gilda was selected at the opening night film of the Tribeca Film Festival, was distributed theatrically through Magnolia Pictures, had a broadcast premiere on CNN, and was nominated for 2 Creative Emmys. She's currently in production on a new documentary about Hawaii-born cult director Albert Pyun. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you
Great.
for having me.
Absolutely. So, this is, like I said earlier, this is going to be kind of a more free-flowing talk about kind of like you working in the documentary field or just filmmaking in general, and how the marketplace has changed throughout your career, and like this, it's a topsy-turvy world in a way. It's like always changing, with streaming and whatnot, and how it really is the kind of renaissance or golden age of documentaries, right? Or nonfiction films. And also, at the end of the panel, we're going to reserve some time for any questions from the audience, and they can just type in their questions in the Facebook text, just in the comment section. We're also on YouTube, and the comments will come out, the questions will come out on the screen, and we'll read them off and then have our panelists answer them. So maybe who wants to go first? I see fear in these people's eyes. I'm gonna go to Alexander because I know the longest. So
Okay.
Alexander, talk about your.
What's the question?
Oh, yeah,
right. Now I have no choice but
How
to
is
answer.
No, I'm going to ask a question now, right? So, Alexander. Actually, the question is, what was your kind of, how did you start in filmmaking in general? I know you all have different backgrounds, starting off, right?
Yeah, I started in 2003. Actually, I made my first film, mostly out of frustration, because I wanted to be initially a playwright and a screenwriter. Before that, I wanted to be a golf professional, but that's a whole other story. I had this one screenplay when I went to NYU, and it was optioned a couple of times and came really close to being produced, but it didn't. And eventually I moved to Denver, and I thought, I'm not going to let people sort of dictate what gets made or what doesn't get made. I'm just going to make my own films. And I came across this very strange little story, very little, very local from Colorado about this chicken that lived for 18 months without a head. Mike the Headless Chicken is his name, and they actually have a whole festival in Fruita, Colorado, around the chicken. It's a whole sort of pop culture phenomenon, and they decided to make a film about that. I mean, it was a tiny film. I mean, talking about like $5,000. Didn't know what I was doing at the time, but we went to BFAN, the first film festival that I've ever been to, was in South Korea. Yeah,
right.
Where we've been many times.
Yes.
And that's kind of what started it for me.
And then it kind of propelled. And was the next film, was it People versus George Lucas?
No, the next film was about people who speak Klingon.
Oh, okay. So
Old Earthlings. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did a lot of sort of weird pop culture stuff,
Yeah.
which now led me down the path of cinephilia and
Yeah.
kind of film deconstruction.
Okay.
So
we'll get into that.
Yeah,
So,
we'll get into that. So
Emma, how did you get started?
All right. So I come from journalism. I was born and raised in Spain. Everybody in my family is there. And at that time, I didn't know anybody in film or not even a way to get into film. So I studied journalism because I knew that I wanted to tell stories. And then fast forward a few years, I finished my degree in the US and I ended up in San Francisco. And this amazing Mexican filmmaker, Lourdes Portillo, hired me to study and investigate the killings of women in Mexico. This is 1999. And that was really my schooling. It was really in the field of Juarez when I realized this was really my passion. I could collaborate with an amazing team of professionals, and I would have enough time to really tell the stories instead of be rushing through reporting. Lourdes got all kinds of awards. We went to Sundance, she got everything pretty much. And that was like, I was just watching all that, thinking, And then after that, I started working on my own films. My first film I made with Celeste Carrasco. She's the Matador. Went back to my own country, and I told the story from a different lens about bullfighting. We worked on that film for 10 years.
Oh.
From then on, I think a big shift for me is that because I was trained as a journalist, I found the stories outside in the news. But then, due to love, I moved to Hawaii, and in Hawaii, my career really shifted. I found the stories more in a personal way.
Mm-hmm.
But I always use what I have learned through journalism to tell the stories. And through documentary film, I also learned a lot the language of visual metaphor. And that's what I've been doing for the last, couple of decades or so.
Okay.
Very independent, completely independent.
Yeah. And Lisa?
Well, I started out as an actress. And then, long story short, I fell into this producing job. And I was like, wow, this is so much better to be like on the other side of the camera than trying to get a role or it's a lot more powerful, even though, as we all know, it's not so easy to make a documentary, but it's really hard to get an acting job, I think.
Right.
So I started producing, and then I started I worked at an advertising agency that did a lot of long form, real people stories of people struggling through different illnesses, people in jail, people just really struggling, and they weren't full documentaries, but they were up to like about an hour long. And probably over the years, I probably interviewed maybe 500 or 1,000 people, and I just loved like having people tell me their story. So that was kind of it. It's like kind of being a therapist. Well, you're not a therapist because you're just listening. You don't have to give any advice. And so, and then I fell into. I was working for a nonprofit volunteering at a nonprofit organization for people with cancer in New York City called Gilda's Club. And I knew Gilda Radner, the comedian, but I was like, wow, her story is really good. And then somehow I was like, I can make a documentary, and not without knowing that I worked for an ad agency where you have a budget and they give you everything. Not everything's paid for, but you don't have to raise your own money. And I was like, I could do this. And then I didn't really realize, but once you're in that rabbit hole, you can't get out. Like you don't want to get out because you're committed to the people that you're doing your documentary on. You're committed to the people who have donating your money, and that's kind of how I fell into it. And then I've just really loved, I love the entertainment business, and I love to hear the stories of really unsung heroes. And that's where Albert Pune to me is like an unsung hero. He's everything that I love in a story, which is somebody who struggles against diversity and still continues to be creative. So that's kind of how I got to Hawaii.
Oh, great. So, I mean, it's interesting. So all three of you commenters, you didn't go to film school at all, right?
No.
So, I mean, like, so talk about,
I went to acting school.
you're the acting school, yes. But like, you know, like, it's like, I mean, you're a playwright,
I mean, dramatic writing.
dramatic
yeah.
journalism, right? So, I mean, these are, you know, again, different facets of creative, creative content making or whatever, you know, or the arts in some respect. But so, I mean, again, headless chicken, and doing the going to Mexico, interviewing, and then you the Gilders Club and whatnot, like How by Fire. What were so like? I mean, were you wanting to, like, you're just, you know, your head underwater, like, what am I doing? Like, it's like, so when was the breaking point for you, or was there a breaking point, and then what allowed you, what was the kind of, you know, the catalyst to continue onward? Anyone can jump in.
For me, the first breaking point was actually to be in the field shooting and witnessing the experiences of these women and these families. I'm working with an amazing team of professionals, like an amazing sound mixer, amazing sound recorders, like a cinematographer, editor, and then witnessing the making of the film. We worked on that film for 4 years. And just, that was like, I realized this is it for me. That was one of them. Then when Celestia and I started to do Ella es el Matador, that was our film. So it was like a whole new set of complication, because we were completely brand new. Nobody knew us. We had nothing to show. We were doing a film about women bullfighters. There were like all kinds of like detractors in every way. So, but what I remember is that when we started, we had an idea, and then when things got really, really difficult, we always found like a little treasure. We'll find like a piece of archival footage. It's like, oh my God, we have to keep going. Or somebody will give us funding. There were always like surprises that will give us like oxygen to keep moving forward. But for me, the breaking point was just from the very beginning, but then it was like, how do you sustain yourself through whatever it takes to do the film? Anyway.
You go.
Well, I guess my breaking point was raising money. And I did an Indiegogo campaign for 3 months, begging people for money every day, begging everyone I know, and friends would be like, I don't have any money. I was like, would you buy me a cup of coffee? And they said, yeah, of course. I said, well, then donate $3. Like, it was a very, like, it was a really breaking point of oh my God, like, what am I doing? And then during that time, I was doing advertising work at the same time to try to raise money, but during the Indiegogo, it was just me. Like,
that's a full-time job, right?
It is a full-time job. So anyone who ever wants to do a crowdfunding campaign, get all your friends on board, and and don't be mad if they don't donate money, because we can't hold that against them. Because so I think that was really the breaking point, because I was like, what did I get myself into? And then my own personal life starts to go, because I'm only doing this Indiegogo campaign. I'm not doing my film. I'm not doing anything except for begging people for $3, or 50 cents, like anything. So that was the breaking point. I think it's like, I don't know, things come along. Like, even now, I know we'll get to Albert later, but like, I was like, all is lost with this film, because I've always wanted to bring him to Hawaii, and we never had the resources to do it. And then this came along, and it's like, I don't know, sometimes good things happen out of nowhere.
Right. Alexander?
I mean, I think, I don't know, for me, it's I don't know that there's a breaking point, but it's really this idea that there's a fundamental sort of need to tell stories, and there are stories that I've always wanted to tell. I think it took me a while to actually accept the fact that I'm a filmmaker. You know, I mean, I'm just finishing now essentially my 10th feature. You know, so there's a point where you have to go, okay, well, I guess I am a filmmaker now. You know, it's but it took me several films, I think, to feel really comfortable with this idea of, you know, going from like, yeah, I make films to I'm a filmmaker. And I think I'm quite frankly miserable if I don't have a project to work on, because there's a lot of stuff. There's always, you know, just a ton of stories that are in either pre-production or development stage that that I want to tell. There's never enough time to make them all, you know, for sure. But that's what keeps me going. And I think that there's going to be, you know, as I always say, there's going to be maybe some point down the road where I don't have any more stories to tell, and that'll be the day when I'll stop and do something else. But I'm nowhere near that point. I feel like, especially films about film, to me is a real sort of, you know, it's a unique sort of kind of art form. And every time I go deeper and deeper into what you can do with that, and I'm super excited about it.
All right, so is there like a threshold when it comes to, like, I mean, there's no imposter syndrome anymore, or do you still get those imposter syndrome sometimes, or are you? I mean, like you're saying I am a filmmaker. Does anyone else consider themselves a filmmaker, or you still have doubts? No. Okay, great. Yeah.
No, anymore.
All right. It's good. So like, I talk to filmmakers and actors. They still have, you know, or even lawyers, and in a way they have that kind of imposter syndrome thing. But you know, so it's like, okay, so let's talk about chasing trends. Do you guys chase trends when it comes to? No. Okay.
No.
I mean, Alexander, maybe we can start. Like, I know you the longest. I mean, your first films were about kind of pop culture-y, you know, in the geek, and then they kind of went into kind of cinephilia. I mean, you kind of cornered the market on cinephilia, you know, with especially the last three films, and that's definitely a trend. So,
well, but okay. Let me put it this way: if I were chasing a trend, I'd be doing a lot better, I think, than I am now.
yeah.
Well, I mean, and this is what's so frustrating. I mean, in a way, look, and I'm very happy with the fact that every film that I make is a film that really comes from here.
Right.
And I'm just not going to have it any other way. You know, when we started out to make 7052, it's really difficult for people to understand, you know, because nobody had ever made a full feature about a scene, right? It's like, how do you make 90 minutes about 2 minutes of cinema? My problem was the opposite. It was like, how am I not going to make a 3-hour film about the shower scene? But people didn't understand that. And so we made a sizzle, and then, you know, took that to market, and people were like, oh, this looks great, but come back to it after you've finished the film. And then we did a second sizzle. It was the same story. So we found just enough money to pay our crew and our post-production, which was very, very expensive, but not pay ourselves. And then, of course, we got into Sundance, and then we sold it really well, and, you know, everything was fine. And I thought, well, after that, it's going to be easier. You know, well, then except that the next film was a mythological take on Alien,
right?
And it was this exact same cycle. You know, people kept saying, you know, come back to us and blah blah blah. We got into Sundance, we sold it well, and then back to the same story. And then, of course, The Leap of Faith, which is a chamber piece about The Exorcist, same old story. And you'd think it gets easier. It doesn't get any easier. And I think part of that is that because I don't follow trends. And in fact, one of our distributors at Dog Wolf, Ollie Harbottle, says, you know, he's talking about my films, and I can kind of take that as a compliment. He says, you know, your films play really well once they're finished, but they're really difficult to envision beforehand.
Right.
And so that's my curse, you know.
Right. But isn't that the curse of like anyone? No one wants to give development money, right? They just want to get the final finished product, right? And so I mean, Emma, how about you? I mean, some of the challenges, like when you're chasing after a subject that you're interested in, how do you kind of sustain that? And, you know, I mean, a lot of these subjects, you know, they're kind of, in a way, like, you know, when going to Alexander, like, you know, these are, you know, in cinephilia, it's still a niche, and there's like a, say, dedicated pool of investors or audiences that you can approach, right? That's what crowdfunding is all about, right? So how about you? Do you strategize in the way when you're choosing your subjects and kind of?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't make a film for me. I make a film for an audience. So when I find a story, I do the research to find out what has been done, how, if there is something that has been done, how it has been done, what market has been in, like what's been done before me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do need to choose stories that I feel passionate about too. And for me, each film is a universe. So I just dive in. It needs to be something that entices me enough to be able to sustain it through the years. Because for me, I don't know how long it's going to take me. For me, my filmmaking is very much about immersion and immersion. So that means I go in, and it has to be something that is rich for me. And then something that hopefully by the way I make it, it will connect to other human beings, and just they will take something away for themselves. You were asking before, like how the industry has changed. I remember when my first film with Lourdes Portillo, I remember that she asked me, like, we're just going to do a website at the end of the film, and we're just going to put the credits and a couple of photos, and then maybe, and that was like cutting edge in 1990, in 2000. That was cutting edge, and look at where we are now. But I've always been very independent, so when I find a story, I need to make sure, how am I going to fund this? And I've been very fortunate to get at least a section of it, a portion of it from PBS, Pacific Islanders in Communication, is a funder of The Island in Me, POV, Yes El Matador, Oro Maricake is going to be in PBS Hawaii. It's like, so I need to make sure that I make films that are quality enough to go into those platforms. And also I need to make sure that they are enticing to other people, like individual donors, private foundations, crowdfunding. We also did a Kickstarter campaign with The Island in Me, and we got funding from 21 different countries. When I started with that film and I went to New York and I was pitching it in 2012, they told me, I don't know how you're going to fund this film. I mean, I was there, I went to, I don't want to say who, but it was like, we just don't know what to do with this film. And then I came to Hawaii. We launched a Kickstarter campaign. I don't want to curse, but I was like, it scared the shit out of me, because it's like I was in development and I was going to expose these two women to something that I wasn't sure what was going to be, but we needed to be public. We needed to be out there.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. We got funding from 21 different countries. And that's when I was like, oh, there is an audience there for this film. And just to say a little bit.
Lisa, you talked earlier about you're fascinated by subjects who are kind of unsung heroes or underdogs, right? So is that your common theme when you're looking at something to explore?
Also really incredibly talented.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of amazing entertainers and there's a lot of amazing directors, but I think there's the talent behind it. And going back to what's happening a little bit with me is that I'm working on a couple projects at the same time to see, I'm sort of moving them along in different directions. So I'm working on a documentary about Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop. Lamb Chop was the puppet.
Yeah.
And that's been a really easy road. Like that subject is really easy. And then
because Lamb Chop is so beloved.
Yeah. And Albert's story is so deep and so wonderful and so unique. You couldn't make up Albert Kuhn, like you couldn't make up his whole story. And what I'm getting is, well, no one knows who he is. He's not famous enough. He's not like, so I'm in that category that I do have access to things, but the person that it has to be something that people have to bank on. And it's been a challenge because it's the same thing. Like, I know your film is going to be something that people love. It's just convincing people to give you, to help you, because unless you have your own money, which would be the best thing in the world. If you have your own money, then you can make whatever films you want, without a problem. But
Rich Uncle or
that's the key.
That's
for
key.
anyone out
But
the
then you probably
audience.
get lazy, I think, if that happened, right? You'd probably get
You have all set of
complacent.
problems.
Yeah.
You would? What problem?
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the beauty of fundraising is that you're building relationships, and people, that's how you build your audience. That's what happened to us, is that we do the Kickstarter campaign, and then it's like people have been following us, for years, to see the film because they were part of it. And there's a part of engagement that I think is really rich. If you were rich, and there's a lot of filmmakers that are rich,
Yeah.
but it's like if you don't have that luxury, then you have to be creative about it, because otherwise nobody's gonna do it for you. I mean, that's just my take on it.
But so do you have a following? It's like, you have everyone has a track record now. And so do you have like these relationships and through Kickstarter or crowdfunding or
Individual
payment, like do you
donors.
have patrons, like
Yeah.
regular patrons or whatnot? So
I have to, I do. I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression.
Sure.
But I've had to, I mean, one of the things that I've learned in this business is that, and correct me if, well, say something different if it's different for you, but is that very few people will take risks.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to find funding when you don't have somebody famous already, when you don't have, a lot of footage for development. So that's quite difficult. And for me, I am so grateful. I have a couple of individual donors that have been, I don't think I would have ever done anything if it wasn't because they helped me, even if it was like 10,000, 5,000, 20,000. I mean, you don't make a film with that. But just the fact that I think it's really important to have a sense that somebody's supporting you along the path. And that is, for me as a filmmaker, to give opportunity to other people, and for other people that have money that I don't have to be able to know that they believe in me. And then you have to be a risk taker. It's kind of like, otherwise you don't get anything done. But it's that's why relationships are so important.
yeah, it's very important to find people on the same wavelength, so to speak. So I mean, like aside from being nice, like in the sense like you're being an entrepreneur essentially,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So talk about relationship building. What are you like on a kind of shorthand of how do you maintain that on a professional level? Like if it's like meaning like milestones for delivering assets, and all that stuff, just and whatnot. When you have this like a regular pool of investors or patrons, how do you keep them aside from being very talented, and like and they love your work? What are kind of like things that you need to kind of like maybe a checklist of things that you need to make sure to deliver to them and make them essentially they're trusting you and you're doing your work, right? So
I think a good story,
Mhm.
access to the story, and I think that's where the ethical part comes into. They need to believe in something. It has to be a good match. Don't you think? It has to be the right person for the right project. And yeah, I think openness, being able to be open to this is for me is like I keep them informed. Like this is what's working, this is what's not working. Not be like, oh, they have money and I don't, so I have to hide all these secrets. No, it's like just to really include them along the way. Keep your independence.
Mhm.
Like I remember once with Ellas El Matador, we were almost done. We went to Tribeca All Access. We got an award, and I had an amazing woman that I didn't know who she was. She's like, I want to be the executive producer of the film. And I said, who is this woman? I had no idea. And I researched her, and then I met with her. And in that meeting, I wanted to make sure that she understood that we were not going to give up our editorial control. And it sounds so controlling to say that, right?
Right.
But I remember having this lunch with her, and I was like, we've been working on this film for 8 years, and why do you want to be part of this film? And then her connection to the story was so strong, even though she was an African American woman, a billionaire, but it was like very different than a very different background, to be funding a film about women bullfighters. Her name was Sheila Johnson, and she came through. But I wanted to make sure that she understood that we wanted to make the film that we wanted to make. And she was very respectful. And that was just one example. But my other major funder she's like an angel to me. She's like never even asked for any credit of any kind. She just kind of like supports you. So everybody is different.
Yeah.
But, and it's just knowing where they are and what they're doing, I think is important. What their motivation
Sure.
is.
Anyone else want to?
I think to always make sure that the people who support you know that you're moving forward,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and always keeping them because it is very easy to stop.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to keep going forward just to let people know you're going forward, which helps, you know, in the end. But I think that for me, that communication and letting people know, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I shot this, or oh, we got this, like, seems to make a big difference in oh no, I haven't done anything, you know, COVID, blah blah blah. It's like, you know, that, like, just to make sure even in when the world stops, you're still going forward in some sense.
Yeah, my strategy has always been to make people understand that, you know, there's this train and the train is leaving the station. And even though I don't have necessarily the money to make the film, but it's like, if you're not going to, you know, if you don't jump on the train now, you're going to miss the opportunity to work on this film, or to be a part of it. You know, it's a strategy that makes my producer, Carrie, very nervous every single time. But the thing about it is that I cannot stand to not finish something. When I start something, I have to finish it. So in a way, then once I start it, there's no way back. We have to find a way, even if we only have a tenth of the budget at that point. And so, you know, I don't exactly know how it's worked for so long, but it keeps working. And I think once you project that sort of confidence, and also because there's a belief, obviously, in the project. You know, I don't just make a film to make a film. I make a film because I believe that I have to make this film. And so eventually you find a way to get it done. And I think film festivals are very, very important. I mean, I've been, as you know, traveling for a long time, for many years, going to many, many film festivals. And I believe in being a part of that, because that's how you create relationships, you build relationships, you develop relationships, and being involved with festivals in so many other ways than just showing you film, but also through talks, through master classes, through juries, you know, whatever it may be, is a way to get to stay really connected in that world. And I've had many opportunities coming out of film festivals. I mean, that's where I met William Friedkin and how I ended up making Leap of Faith. Yeah. So, you know, I'm a huge believer in what you guys do.
I mean, let's talk about. I mean, a lot of it's all happy accidents anyway, right? When you like it's. But let's talk about. Okay, let's talk about permission and clearances and whatnot. How do you really choose your subject? You know, how do you, like, either through, you know, a live person, or is it through the estate or something like that? Or like to clear, like, you know, like the, you know, just like in the feeling
fair use,
exactly, and whatnot. So, I mean, Lisa, you said that you volunteered at Gilda's Club, right? So, so it's kind of in a way organic process when you decided to make a film about Gilda Radner, right? So, how did you approach the estate?
Well, Michael, who was Gilda's brother, was very connected to Gilda's Club. But it still takes convincing. You know, I think whether it's the person themselves or the estate, they have to know they trust you. So it takes a while to build trust, and you really have to believe. I mean, it is a really big gift to give somebody the right to do a film about them or the estate. So there's a real trust factor, and I think there's a lot of communication that goes back and forth about what kind of film you want to do. And so I think that's, and it doesn't happen. No, but I'm not that I know, maybe it happens to other people. Nothing happens like, hey, I want to do a film about somebody, and they're like, okay, go ahead, do it. It takes weeks, months, years sometimes to build that relationship.
So I assume it was a very prolonged process of going back and forth when it comes to.
Well, I think once for the Gilda Radner film, once Gilda's brother Michael came on board, he actually brought friends and families and support.
Yeah.
But getting participants in that film were really hard.
Right.
People who knew Gilda, because it took like one person to tell another person. Like, I couldn't get any famous people in it until I started. It was like a building. You get Gilda's brother, then you get her best friend, and then you get her writing partner. Like, you get a one person leads you to another. Like, that was my experience. And so each thing is different. And I think once you have a track record and somebody's seen, like, I guess with Love Gilda, people know I think people know I'm not here to exploit the person, that I'm here to tell a very honest story about them. So I think once you have one film, which I only really have one film, as opposed to my other filmmakers, I think once you start to have a track record, you start to build trust. And so I think that's the hardest thing is the first film.
I mean, you were making it up as you go in a way,
Yeah.
right? So what lessons did you learn? What, I mean, if you did it all over again, or if you were, what would you do differently?
I don't know. You think you make one film and it's like, oh, it's all like each one is a different story.
You're sure. Yeah.
It's like I don't know what I would do differently. I don't know. I think you just you go with what you're going for.
Mhm.
I mean, I did waste some, like, I shot things for the first film that I never needed to use in the film. Now I don't do that anymore. I only shoot exactly what I think I'm going to use. So
Okay.
I don't have not that many unneeded scenes. So I don't know if that's what I'm a little more strategic about what I shoot.
Got it. And Hema, let's talk about the Alien and Me. Like, how did you approach the subject and whatnot? And how did you kind of gain that trust?
Oh, well, so at the beginning of my career, the stories I found more in the news. This was different. The Island in Me, I knew one of the main characters of the film very well, Amelia Borowski. And when I first met her, she told me that she had grown up in this island in Puka Puka, and she wasn't sure if it had been real or not. That her childhood had, I could tell that had a huge impact on her. And then living with her in San Francisco, she had this urge to go back. She had not been back in Puka Puka in 30 years. She spent the first 5 years of her life there. And she had a book in the house that she grabbed, and it was the book of Johnny Frisbee, Miss Ulysses from Puka Puka. And she's the other main character of the film. And she picked up the book, and by reading her book, she realized that the place was real, that this woman was speaking about experiences that she's had. So I was witnessing this unfolding. I never thought I would be making a film in Hawaii because I didn't think it was the right thing for me to do. But in this case, it was like I was and I was not even thinking I was going to make a film then, but I knew that, wow, this woman is being influenced by this other book, and I don't even know this, if Johnny Frisbee is alive, So she ends up going to Puka Puka, and that changes my life forever. And when she comes back on a trip, I learned that Johnny Frisbee is still alive, and we meet. And when I met Johnny Frisbee, and she's this amazing Cook Island legend, I was like, whoa, maybe this could be a film. The Island in Me is not a film. You can't do research about Puka Puka without going there. There was hardly ever anything written about it. So everything I learned about this place first was from these two women. And then with both of them, we actually planned this Kickstarter campaign and started trying to get access to the atoll. I mean, both of them are daughters from Puka Puka. So thanks to them, I was able to plan the journey with them and go there. But this was a very completely different film for me because it's not something that I could read in the news, that I could just figure out who to interview. Like, no, I just had to go. And by going also, I was really transformed by the island. So the film is really about how this pretty unique place in the world has changed the three of us, and also really how Puka Puka is a really unique place that marks many people that have been in touch with, including the Puka Pukan people that live there and in the diaspora. So very different experience. Yeah.
So I mean, Lisa, you talked about being more strategic, in the sense like your sort of subject. But Hema, I mean, you're probably filming everything.
I do, and I have some friends, and it's like, I'm working with these filmmakers, and they just film like shot. Like they know exactly what they're going to be filming, and that is fabulous. That you can do that. For me, it's not like that. For me, filmmaking is very much. Maybe this is how I learned to do it. But for me, the beauty of filmmaking is that it's a process of transformation. So I find a story, I'm like, oh, maybe I think it's about this. And then I immerse myself in the story. And then I let the experience to arise. And I believe that everybody's changed by it. Like the main characters of the film, the filmmaker, the people that are part of everybody in the on location, the editor, like everybody's kind of changed in the process. And I love, for me, documentary is a way about like opening my eyes into the world, about learning about other people. So I don't want to do it any other way. I know it's crazy making because we ended up, there's my heart, Keon Lee, my editor. We had like 450 hours of footage. I mean, there's so many things that we won't be able to ever put in the film. But that is the film that we have today. And I say we because it's a collaborative process. It's not the film that I ever imagined at the beginning.
Mhm.
And that to me that's why I do documentary.
Alexander, are you a little bit more meticulous in your planning, or?
Usually the idea for the film and the way that it's going to be executed comes like this. It's super intuitive. It comes very, very quickly. I mean, sometimes within hours, and then I have to figure out how to do it. Now, of course, within the process of it, a lot changes, and there's a lot of discovery, and sometimes you think you're going in a certain direction, and then it takes you down a certain rabbit hole, and it becomes an alien thing. So but of course, what I do also sometimes it's not about asking permission, it's about using fair use, and that's a whole other beast. Fair use is at once a science and it's an art, and it's very complex. But we've been making fair use. I mean, especially when you make a film like The People versus George Lucas, you can't just go to George and say, "Hey, is it okay if we use some clips?" I mean, of course we did approach him, but we knew what the response was going to be. But that's a whole other set of challenges. We've dealt with fully licensed movies, and then most recently we've done a lot of fair use. And I like it. I like that process in the sense that it really, I mean, sometimes you literally have to build a legal argument around the use of a single clip. It's extremely painstaking. I mean, the logs are crazy, and but I like the pushback. It sounds like maybe a weird thing, but because we work obviously with fair use lawyers, and sometimes they're pushing back on something, even though I think I have a pretty good understanding now, of fair use, having worked with fair use for over 10 years. And when they push back, it puts me in a position where either I have to find my way around that pushback and push back myself in trying to really make a stand and build an argument around the use of this clip. Or if I can't get my way, then that must mean that there's a better way out there to a different clip, something else, another way to get that across. And so what I like about it is that, as frustrating as it is, that it pushes me always to make a better film. But fair use, what's tricky about it is that it's a defense, it's not a right.
Right.
Oh,
So-
I just want to follow up because of in terms of an archival film, I use fair use is the best thing, and it really helps you kind of like be more strategic about what, especially with the interviews I do, I sort of base them around fair use. And I guess that's part of, in an archival film, it's pretty planned out in advance. Whereas like with my Albert film now, which is a verite film, that is really like anything goes. That's so. I guess it's like two different films.
Sure.
I just want to say like I can plan out an archival film, but a verite film is like you don't know what you're going to get, and that's what's exciting about that.
Right. But I mean, you gotta do, so labyrinthine, right? And like the, how do you do the legal dance when it comes to fair use and like archive footage and whatnot? I mean, because these are essentially commercial property, right? So how do you make the argument to, I mean, because there's like, obviously like, non-commercial or festival rights or whatever, and then when film gets sold, then it has to go through a whole gamut of other, things and stuff like that. So what is the strategy there?
Well, I mean, there's no strategy. You just you can't you can't go to the studio if you either make the decision to go fair use or to license.
Right.
It's one or the other.
Right.
So in the case of, I mean, I'll give you the case of Universal and Psycho at 1752. Carrie, my producer, got a call. We were early in the process, and we were not sure. We were, part of us wanted to just give them a lump sum, offer a lump sum, and say, look, we're making a film about the shower scene. We're going to give you X amount. Take it or leave it, because that's if they leave it, then you can go fair use, or you just go fair use. We had not made that decision because it was too early. We didn't know how much of the film we were going to use. We didn't know, how much of the shower scene. Well, Carrie gets a cold call from the licensing person at Universal. Very confrontational. And that person immediately says, well, I hope you know that before you start a film about the shower scene or about any of our properties, you're going to have to give us $10,000. Carrie says, well, actually, no, we don't have to do that. She says, oh, well, I hope, I hope you know that you can't use fair use for a commercial project. And so she says, Carrie said, again, I'm sorry, but yes, we can, and yes, we have. So needless to say, the phone call didn't go very well. Carrie hung up, and she was ready to throw up. She called immediately our fair use lawyer and said, you did great, because the moment you ask, can we license? It's over. You
open that door.
You've opened that door. You can no longer do fair use.
You're inviting the vampire in.
That's right. That's right. And so at that point, we, and it's too bad because Universal closed that door. So it was too late. We were not going to go back and say, okay, well, how about we give you $60,000 or whatever. Right. So we went fair use. And you know what? Here's the thing. One of the tenets of fair use is that if you're going to make a film about a film, something like this specifically, like, they would have to prove that 1752 actually, is commercially damaging to Psycho. Well, guess what? 1752 has given them a whole lot of attention. Again, right? If there's been so many double bills of Psycho with 1752 around the world, they can't make that argument. And as it should do well for them. That's the films we make are about putting a spotlight on these old classic films that, of course, are always going to do well. But it puts them in a new context and a new light. So, but all this to say, we never got a claim. Everything's fine if you do it well and if you do it right. And I know a lot of filmmakers who don't. I know a lot of filmmakers who really are B-rolling their films, and that makes me nervous because if they get a claim and they lose in court, it damages the entire industry. So you got to do it well. And doing it well is sometimes you just don't get what you want.
Right. Let's talk about I mean, for Emma, you talked about you having you strategize in the sense that you get essentially like CPB or PIC or PBS in general, like they have their list of kind of deliverables or also like rights and all that stuff. What's the how do you how do you go through that? I mean, you've gone through it many times, but I'm sure it's a very long laundry list of things that needs to be approved, right? Like, can you
I
talk
think
about?
Pacific and Anderson Communication has probably the most serious contract ever.
Yeah.
Which I'm really grateful for because then you really need to know what you're doing.
Right.
So I normally secure my rights in perpetuity, world rights for all formats, even unknown in the future, because you never know.
In the metaverse.
Because it's always changing.
Right.
And once I finish the film, I know that I won't change anything ever. So that's what I like to do as soon as I can afford it.
Right.
And I have different stories about issues that I've had. For instance, with AS El Matador, I wanted to put a song in the ending credits by a very famous flamenco singer in Spain, Martirio. And I contacted her directly. And she said, she watched the film, she loved it. And she said, yeah, you can use this song, but you have to, because you're in the US, you have to contact, I don't know
whoever the rights holder is in the US, right?
So that one, the writer, the singer wanted to give it to us pretty much for free. But I don't know what company it was, but it was a big one. They wanted $50,000. So I was like, okay, out of the question. I mean, nobody will pay that. At least not in my range, and not even like PBS will. I mean, like, right. I would not never have that in the budget. But for me, rights are really is a serious matter because it could really kill the project.
Yeah.
So that was a case with Martirio. So what I did is I went back to her and I said, they want to charge me $50,000. She said like, okay, use this other song that has never been like licensed in the US. And we ended up using a very beautiful song that worked beautifully. So that's when being open works. With Automatic Cake, before I knew I was ever going to do a film, because it was Otto the one that came to me and asked me if I could follow what the situation was in Chinatown with the drug dealing.
And quickly, Automatic Cake is a documentary about Otto Cake. Otto Cake. He's a punk rocker. He's in Honolulu, and he used to sell his amazing cheesecake.
He still does.
Yeah, like the punk rock shows. I remember going to on the side, and he started basically a shop.
12 years ago, part of what he did was he would put together this amazing performance about Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And I went and I just showed with a very tiny camera, not ever thinking that I was going to make a film.
Right.
This amazing show that he put together, and the footage was like incredible. It was, very raw, but it says something about him. So what I do is I placed it in the film because me and my editor, Kyung-Lee, knew that it was essential, was a part that was very essential for him. And what I normally do is I do the film that I want to do, being very mindful that I need to clear this, that I need to clear that, I need to clear that.
And
then at the very end,
right,
and at the very end, I'm like, okay, who do I need to go to? Because sometimes in the edit, it keeps shifting. So you might only need 30 seconds, you might need 10 seconds. So that's what I do. But with Hedwig, the footage of Hedwig, I had to contact the author, I never asked for permission to shoot that because I was just like a audience member shooting him. I was in the first row, and it took me months to clear it. But what I did is because I never had the rights, and they said to me, hey, you should have never filmed that because it's a play, and it's like, you can't clear it. So what I did is I just said, I really made a case. I sent them the film and I said, this is essential. And it was amazing because at the end, we were able to clear it for free. But it took me months to clear it. And I just showed them the meaning of the scene, why I needed to be there. But for instance, with The Island in Me, you guys will see a beautiful scene of Johnny Frisbee. Johnny Frisbee was very popular in New Zealand. She was part of this amazing show, Beauty and the Beast. And she was really the only woman of color, Pacific Islander, on the show, and just very out there, amazing. So I knew that I wanted to show her in Beauty and the Beast. And I tracked down New Zealand television, the right person that had the footage, and then they sent me back to Getty, New York. Getty, New York was a lot of money. So there was no way around it. I have to do it.
Right.
Because to me, and I talked to Kiana and I was like, oh. And she was like, so we cut it? I'm like, we can't cut it because it's too essential for the story. But I always make those decisions at the very end. Like if because you never know what you can really live without or what you absolutely need to clear. The same with music, music is, it's a very serious matter.
Yeah, for sure. Lisa, how about you? You sold your film to Magnolia, was released theatrically with Magnolia, and also to CNN Films, right? Broadcast. Were you also involved with a lot of that? Yeah.
Well, I think what I try to do is approach. My goal is really to have as much personal archival as I can, and use fair use as much as I can. So I try to, and just so everybody knows, is fair use. Even it does save you a lot of money, but lawyer fees are pretty high. So you have to budget that into your budget. So I try to do that. And it's the same thing. It's like, what is essential? Like as you're going through as you're going through your rough cut and you're going through your film, and there's some, like I wound up paying a ton of money to Reeling in the Years or whatever, this for like one audio line. Like they wouldn't give me a discount on the video. I wasn't even using the video. I was just using one line, but I needed that line for my film.
Yeah.
And then other things I cut out. I was strategic about what I could cut, but I was like, I'm not losing. It's like a great line. And I think it's just a ridiculous, like some of the but so it's an art in itself, and you have to work with people, great lawyer, good post producer
Mhm.
on my end. I had a great who did all the logs and all the she spent weeks making sure everything was cleared.
Right.
So but I do love personal archival.
Oh,
It's the best. Like the more you can get of that
Yeah.
is just you couldn't pay for that.
Talk about the market, the new, marketplace is always changing now. Something in the streaming world, you have Netflix, whatnot, or and all these other streams, Amazon, Hulu, you name it. Like, and it's like, and a lot. I mean, Netflix, basically they, on the many, because they're like, not the Death Star, but like I mean, they're the kind of they're like the big wig of all streamers, right? They're worldwide. Their whole boasting is like they're in 190 plus countries, right, or 200 countries or whatever. Talk about how do you? I mean, because before you used to carve out rights through different territories and whatnot, but now you have Netflix and they want to buy it for the entire world. Like, are you guys okay with? I mean, it's just like that's just the necessary evil in a way now, or are you okay with the sense of like relinquishing ownership or whatnot, that it's going to be in perpetuity on Netflix forever?
I'm not okay with it. And look, I mean, I don't want to, bite the hand that feeds me, but because they have, bought some stuff, even though never for the world, because we usually do deals.
Right.
We carve out some territory so that we can actually make the film, and then they'll come in at
because you can windle it, like you can do
Yeah.
theatrical, and then you can do SVOD at
Yeah.
the very end or something. Like that could be their Netflix deal or something.
Yeah, it was
right?
7052. We had what did we have? We had Arte for France and Germany, and then we had sold it to IFC for North America, and then Netflix came in and just got the rest of the world.
Right.
Which I guess they do,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to come in early,
Yeah.
because they were part of those people who were like at first were like, well, how are you gonna make a film about this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, I don't know. Look, I'm very conflicted about Netflix, and I don't want to say bad things, because I think they do great things, obviously. But it's a very complicated.
Yeah.
For me as a cinephile, it's a very complicated thing, because the only streamer that I have is Criterion. It's a Criterion channel, which makes me very old school.
Right.
In a way. But I'm tired of people coming to me and saying, oh my gosh, I get this Netflix membership and I can't find a good thing on it. Like, I've watched all the good stuff, and what is there? Do you have any recommendations? I'm like, well, try Criterion.
Yeah.
I just feel that we're in an age where we talk a lot about content, and I think the word content for me is very damaging. It's very damaging, right? Because like Lawrence of Arabia is not content, right?
Yeah,
it's a great movie you get to watch on 70 millimeters,
Sure.
right? So we have to. I think there's a place for all of it,
Yeah.
For I just wish that they didn't have such a monopoly of it, because I think it makes it very, very difficult. I mean, especially when everything is sort of regulated by algorithms. I think people are longing for other stuff, but I don't think the algorithms are making that clear necessarily to those big streamers. So it makes it very difficult when you have something a little bit more out of the mainstream, a little bit more unique or a little bit more daring, to convince those big streamers, right off the bat, to actually give you money for it. So as a result, I think there's a lot of filmmakers who are struggling to get their stories out there. So that's my speech, I guess.
Right. How about Emma? You're.
I'm very, for me, like Netflix is still a mystery, really. Like, I have not been able to open that door. I don't even know how you open that door. Unless I think you mentioned film festivals before, and I think one unfortunate thing that I see from the outside is that unless you go to some of the 4 or 5 film festivals where they go to, how do you meet these people? And I wish it would be more democratic, or more based on merit, or more based on, they will go to new festivals. They will actually, be more accessible. Because I think there's a great storytellers out there. And if you really want to find diverse voices and you want to really create, bring in new stories. And I think there is a lot of need, and people want to watch really good stories. I would like that. I mean, I have no idea how to open that door yet,
Right.
you know, and I have been, you know, so yeah, I think hopefully something will have to happen so we're able to actually access
But
for the gatekeepers.
right. Well, okay. How about, but you know, you worked in public broadcasting, right? So do you see that changing? Their process changing? Do you see?
You know, I had a conversation with somebody at Hulu because I have a new film and I want a new film that I'm developing, and I really want to try something different. And I was like, you know, I've always been with working with PBS, which I'm really grateful. And so would you take a PBS film? And they're open. They're open. So it's like, but I just don't know yet how it works. I'm really trying to figure it out because, I mean, PBS makes really great programming. It's like, so why not to put it on these other platforms where people can actually see the films? What kills me sometimes is what you just said. It's like people want to see good programming, and if you're not in those platforms, you're missing out a lot of people that you can reach. So yeah, but I'm sorry, I just don't know yet how it works. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so many great films don't get distribution.
No, it's
No.
I mean,
the reality
that's
of
the
it.
thing, and also algorithms too.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically, you know, just feeding you what they, you know, what the algorithm tells you what to see. Like, there's no sense of discovery anymore.
Exactly.
You know, like it's a, you know, so like that's really unfortunate. I think we have time for some questions from the audience. If there are any questions, just again write it in the comment section on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, and it'll pop up. Oh, we have a question. Sean from Citizen. Any guidance on recruiting an idea, creative production team, music scoring, sound, graphic design, photography? Sorry, the camera's blocking. Can you read that, Alexander, for me?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's on recruiting an ideal creative production team, such as music scoring, sound, graphic design, photography, editing. Essentially, how do you put together a team, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you all have your own. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you have your own team that you work with,
Yes.
Emma as well.
Yes.
I mean, is it just because they have to like they get used to your temperament?
I think it's like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
You pick them up along the way, and if they're true,
Yeah.
you know, to your you know, well, first of all, as friends and your vision and what you want to do, then they stay with you. And I think I'm very fortunate that I think most of the people that I've worked with for 15 years. There's more and more people now who are joining the team, and but it becomes a family. And I think you have to recognize that in people, that you can't make a film. Well, I guess some people make films by themselves.
Yeah.
But not really. I mean, you really sort of
It does
have
take
to
a
have
village,
people.
right? So
It does take a village for sure.
Emma.
Yes, I've been fortunate to build good relationship with my editor, Keon Lee, and also tend to work with the same people if we can sustain the relationship throughout the making of the film. But my colorist and online editor, Heather Weaver, the sound mixer, Phil Perkins. For me, I feel like the crew is kind of like an organism. So if there is something that is not working, it could be very problematic. And trust has a lot to do with it. I like to bring people that are not only talented, but that are actually good people too. Because I think there's a lot of ego involved in filmmaking. There's a lot of like craziness that can happen. So having a foundation that people are trying to do their best and that are going to be bringing something new to your story, I think is something that I look for.
Lisa?
Well, I have a lot of people that I've worked with over the years, but there's always new places to film, new music. Maybe you want some different kind of music, different kind of animation. So I find like filmmakers are the best people, or filmmaker groups like the D Word, which is a documentary group, or just calling other filmmakers and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for this. I'm shooting in Hawaii. Who is a great local person?" So I find that that's the best way to build your team if you don't have a team. Just to ask people who have done it before, who live in that area or in that genre.
Right.
Yes.
And I think also people who challenge you too. I think people who get what you're trying to accomplish, who understand that, but people who, especially an editor who pushes back.
Yeah, you don't want yes people, right?
Right, you don't
Yeah,
want yes
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
Because I think that's,
Yeah.
Look at what happened to George Lucas, right? I know.
Yeah.
I had to say it.
Yeah,
I know.
That's great. Yeah. That's like, and then any questions? Oh, we got Shoots Productions. What advice do you have for any young aspiring documentarians who want to get started?
Find a story that you feel passionate about.
I mean, it's that plain and simple, right? I mean, you live in the digital age. You can. I know you want to be strategic in your shooting, but you can cull as much footage as you want, right? So,
But also finish it.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Commit to it and get it done. Because if you don't, it's like then you'll have like 10 unfinished movies, and that's not going to get you anywhere.
So is it like essentially index carding it or something? I don't know what the process is, but there's some strategy form that you want to, when you're with the idea.
I would also say, in order to finish it, I think you need that passion, right?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
to sustain you, and also whenever you finish it, feel like you're happy with it. Because somebody told me once that filmmaking is like agriculture. Like you don't know when the film is going to come out, if it's going to hail, if it's going to snow, if it's going to be like sunny, and it's very true.
Yeah.
Forget about the digital stuff. It's
Yeah.
you never know what's going to happen. So if you feel like you're happy with it, you can live with it. I think that's something that no matter what happens, then it's there forever. And so, I think the passion and also the determination to move through all the difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Do you say anything?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. I think if you have an idea that you just like, it just absorbs you, it takes over you, and you're just gonna and just get started, talk to other people, take workshops, go to film festivals, do talks. I think those are all the good ways to see what other people are doing and getting inspired by.
Do you think it's also sometimes if you get tunnel vision, sometimes it's okay to walk away from it for a bit? And
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You have to. Otherwise, I mean, that's the thing is, I think you learn you can't get overly attached. You have to
still live life.
Yeah.
I think doing something outside of film that fits your filmmaking.
Ah.
Not necessarily obsessed with film, but I don't know, and do something that you enjoy, so it really can fit you and it could give you some perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
And A plus B films. How do you decide whether or not to include your own personal reference point in the story, or completely stay out of the story altogether? Oh, interesting.
Well, I mean, in a way, I think you could say, how can you keep yourself out of your story? Of course, it's going to be, even if you're not a part of it,
it's your perspective.
It's still your perspective, in a way. But I like to stay out of it myself personally. I just don't like to go on camera for my films. I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Emma.
I have never been on camera, but this one, The Island in Me, I had to put myself in, and I never thought I would. Every film is different, whatever the film needs, I don't believe in objectivity anymore, and I come from journalism. I believe in truth, but I think as a documentary filmmaker, I tell a story and I'm just showing a slice of that reality in whatever time I have, 90 minutes, so I think, and there's so much information and stories and films and filmmakers out there that I think what's going to make a difference is if you actually have your own point of view. I think point of view is very important. And of course, then also balancing the story, right? Not making something that is not professional. But every film is different. I never thought I would be narrating a film. I always hated films narrated. And here we go. Now I have to put myself a little bit in it.
Well, I think me personally, I'm not going in front of the camera again, except for because I see the.
But you were an actor.
Yeah.
You're an actress.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and I don't really, but it does work when it's a personal story and the filmmaker is a character, or it's really their story. I think that works. I mean, for me, I don't like to hear some random person asking a question, in a film. That always bothers me. So I'm like, why are they? And then,
Sure.
But I think that if it's personal and it's important, and it's your story, then
of
I
course,
think it's great.
Do we have any Oh, John. Got any favorite curators for good film discovery in addition to the algorithm and the festival circuit?
Curators.
Well, I mean, I've already mentioned the Criterion Channel.
Yeah.
CriterionChannel.com.
Yeah, I admit I subscribe to pretty much all the streaming platforms, but my favorite are Criterion Channel, Criterion, and Shudder.
Yeah, Shudder's great.
Curated,
Shudder's great, yes.
right? It's actually created by humans.
Yes.
And then Ovid. I like Ovid TV.
Oh,
It's great. Yeah. So
And Leap of Faith is on Shudder, by the way.
there you go.
Hint, hint.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we have. I mean, does anyone else want to? You're still figuring out Netflix, right? I think this concludes our our panel. But very quickly, I want you, because for Alexander and Hema, you have films in the festival. Quickly plug those films.
Oh, sure. So my film is called The Taking, and it's essentially a deconstruction of the myth of the West, specifically through the way that Monument Valley has been portrayed or used in the media, in films and advertising, creating
From Stagecoach to
from even beyond before Stagecoach,
exactly, yeah.
You know, all the way to now, and how it has created obviously a false narrative about the American West and America, and it's really a film about Monument Valley that's not a film about Monument Valley. It's a film about the way that cinema works on our brains and creates fabricated memories.
That's screening at the Katsali Kahala
Tomorrow.
in person tomorrow afternoon, but it's also going to be online as well for a brief period of time.
Correct.
Emma?
So my film is The Island in Me, another documentary. It's about I tell the story, the lives of Johnny Frisbee and Amelia Borowski, who grew up in Puka Puka. Puka Puka is an island in the Cook Islands that has never been documented in film before. And the film really documents the journey of these two women and also my own journey on how we have all been impacted by this island. We have like a hybrid showing on Tuesday at Kahala at 6 p.m. It's sold out. And then we're going to Waimea Theater, also on Kauai Island on the 21st. And it's going to be streaming from the 10th through the 28th. And I'm very excited to premiere here.
That's great. Lisa, you don't have a film here, but quickly, we were honoring Albert Pion, who is, pretty much a cult director who's been around for at least 4 decades. And his first film, The Sword and the Sorcerer, and he's been pretty much a cult director working in, kind of like direct to video, essentially, cinema films, like especially in the 80s and 90s, and we're showing The Sword and Sorcerer. We're honoring Albert because he's from Hawaii originally, and you are following Albert for your next documentary. Can you quickly plug that?
Yeah, I've been working on this documentary for a couple years about Albert. Albert lives to make movies. He's an auteur. He struggles with his illness, but he's still making films. And my dream was to be able to film him in Hawaii, in the places where he started filmmaking when he was a kid here. And we never had the budget to do that. And then he's being honored by the festival. And it's just like when magic happens.
Yeah.
And so Albert, this is huge for Albert to be recognized. It really is, in his home island, and his friends, his high school friends are coming who haven't seen him in 50 years. And Albert's going to be filming tomorrow a scene for his new movie, and I'm going to be filming Albert filming his movie. So I'm excited. So the festival's playing several of his films. They're playing Sword and Sorcerer in person, sold out today, but there's several of his films that are
all streaming online. And also he's worked with the likes of Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Christopher Lambert and and then he's an interesting character and absolutely he made a sequel to Streets of Fire. It's like, okay, great, and and he's making it even through his illness. He's still making movies. So it's absolutely incredible, So
you couldn't make Albert or his wonderful wife
Yeah.
They're just like it's also a love story. They're
Yeah.
like the you couldn't make up the story. That's
Mhm.
why I love them and you know, kind of fell into this film because, and thank you for it so much. This means so much to him and the people who love
It's our
him.
pleasure. I mean, it took me years and years to convince people to honor Albert, and I'm glad it happened. So, so again, this concludes our documentary panel as part of our Hiff Talks. And again, we have many Hiff Talks talk panels throughout the festival, all of them free. So just go to our website at hiff.org for all the information. And we have some great topics that are going to be here. It's kind of like between two ferns in a way, but I think it's great. I think this is a great system. I want to thank Tiny Stage Hawaii for hosting us.
Thank you.
This is a great setup, and we encourage you. This place is, available for rent and whatnot. So definitely, if you want to do stuff like live events or streaming or both, you can do it right here at Tiny Stage Hawaii. So again, thank you very much for being part of this panel, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.